Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin in Whitehorse, where RCMP are taking part in a national pilot project tracking and collecting race-based data. That data is supposed to range from use of force to arrests to routine checks, and it'll be used to help improve how officers serve diverse communities. Police say this is an important step in their efforts to address systemic racism. Before collecting any data, they say they'll work with First Nations and other community groups to create guidelines for the project. One of those First Nations is Kwanlin Dunn.
We want to see the true story out there versus we hear a lot of things, but it's not substantiated or whatever. But if the RCMP and the federal force are doing a good proper data collection to identifying where the problems lie with maybe with the community, with the RCMP, with how they conduct themselves and how they are treated. But if we have good data, it'll show on paper where their improvements can be made.
The Yukon is the only territory to take part in this project right now. It's also happening in Alberta, Manitoba, British Columbia, and Nova Scotia. The RCMP plans to start collecting data in Whitehorse in March and will continue to do so until January of 2025. We may never know the exact number of people from the NWT who died due to an overdose in 2023, and a big part of that is due to the wildfire evacuations. The NWT's chief public health officer says some people are believed to have died in other provinces and territories this summer. Dr. Cami Candola says that information isn't shared among Canada's coroners, so it's impossible to confirm those deaths and count them in the NWT's statistics. Candola also says she's aware of possible drug-related deaths of NWT residents in the Yukon this fall, but again, they happened out of the territory. So as it stands right now, only one suspected drug-related death has been counted in the NWT for 2023. Candola says they're still waiting on toxicology for official confirmation. The record-breaking cold snap that's gripped Western Canada has been deadly. The BC Coroner's Service recorded 36 outdoor deaths in just the first half of January. Now, advocates for the unhoused are calling for change. Janelle Hamilton has more.
Normally, we would have tons of shoes here.
Shelves that were once stocked full with warm winter clothing, now down to the last few items.
We don't got 11s in here right now, buddy.
No 11s.
The Union Gospel Mission says with more unhoused people struggling to survive the cold weather, donations are not keeping up with demand.
We saw our community members coming in particular, without the kind of clothing that you would need to actually stay safe, even for a small amount of time outside. Got gloves and a toque too. You're welcome.
This man, who says he is unhoused, was not comfortable sharing his name, but says he's come across 3 people this winter who have died outdoors.
People don't know why things are cold, so they do what they did last year and get high.
In Victoria, the frigid temperatures are an added obstacle for the increasing number of people living on the street.
We're seeing more death, I think, than what I've seen in a long, long time.
The BC Coroner's Service says it's investigating the cause of 36 outdoor deaths during January's record-breaking cold snap. Because
of the drug addiction crisis that's happening, and because of the mental health crisis that we're seeing on the streets, a lot of times people aren't aware when their body is actually freezing.
Emergency Health Services says during that time, medical calls linked to hypothermia and frostbite rose by 300% within a matter of days. This Prince George contractor says he's trying to protect the province's unhoused population by building temporary tiny homes in northern BC, and now attempts to do the same in Vancouver's Crab Park.
Housing provides them a safe place to get out of the weather. I mean, I think we can all agree food, clothing, and shelter are the 3 basic needs.
If we're going to build the material, we will remove it.
But his efforts were halted Thursday by park rangers.
We are not going to give up. We are going to keep looking at our options. We're discussing what else we can do with the lawyer.
With weeks of winter still ahead, advocates continue to push the province for more 24/7 emergency weather shelters.
The reality is that frostbite and hypothermia don't happen on a timeline.
Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Home-based Yellowknife is making a plea for donations. They're asking for home-cooked meals to help feed homeless youth in the city. The CBC's Mahnur Mubarak has that story.
Home-based Yellowknife runs a youth center in the city. That's where youth experiencing homelessness or unstable housing can access things like bathrooms, movies and games, internet access, and food. Currently, they are experiencing a staffing shortage and are asking members of the public to drop off home-cooked meals. There's no official designated cook for home base, so staff are working multiple jobs as well as trying to cook for the youth. Tammy Roberts is executive director. She says if people could deliver some home-cooked meals, that would free up staff so they can spend more time engaging with youth. And she says home-cooked food is a source of comfort for those who use the youth center.
It's just, it's comfort, right? It's like somebody preparing a meal for someone else is comforting. It makes you feel special, makes you feel that somebody's thinking about you and cares about you enough to spend the time that it takes to make something.
Home-based Yellowknife made the call out for donations this month. Since then, some of the types of food people have brought in include caribou stew and lasagna. Brian Machona is a youth center manager. He says the youth get really excited to eat these meals.
And they usually use this word that they call slapping. That's like the youth, like when food is really good. So they're just like, oh, this was slapping, right? So, that's the kind of language, but really good reactions. They're usually always excited, to have a great meal here. So
he recalls one youth opening up after eating a home-cooked meal and how her family used to take caribou bones and bury it on the land as a way to give back and thank the land. He says home-cooked meals are a way for youth to open up, connect, and share personal stories with each other. Mahnur Mubarak, CBC News, Yellowknife.
The federal government is slashing the number of visas it grants to international students by 1/3. The cap is intended to help curb the influx of temporary residents, which has put a strain on Canada's housing market. It's also meant to prevent educational institutions from exploiting international students. Kate McKenna has the details.
Well, look, we've got 2 years to actually get the ship in order. It's a bit of a mess, and it's time to rein it in.
Immigration Minister Mark Miller candidly assessing the country's international student program.
It is not the intention of this program to have sham commerce degrees or business degrees that are sitting on top of a massage parlor that someone doesn't even go to.
The federal government unveiled plans for a 2-year cap on the number of international student permits it'll allow, aimed at stopping exploitative private college programs using international students to churn a profit and freeing up more apartment housing.
It's about time. This should have happened some time ago. On the rental side, you have a lot of low-income renters all battling each other for a low number of spots.
These are all welcoming steps towards betterment of international students and also for the integrity of our system.
The federal government says it'll approve about 360,000 undergraduate study permits for 2024, a 35% reduction from last year. The goal, making sure the program doesn't grow after it ballooned to more than 1 million study permits, mostly in Ontario.
It's unacceptable that some private institutions have taken advantage of international students by operating under-resourced campuses, lacking supports for students, and charging high tuition fees.
Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre laid the blame on the Prime Minister.
He is to blame. He is the one that caused this mess.
But some colleges say they're being unfairly targeted.
I'm concerned that our members are being labeled as fly-by-night, which is not the truth. Our institutions have been operating, many of them for 50, 75. We have members that are over 135 years in operations in Canada and have trained hundreds of thousands of students.
The cap will not apply to international students who are already here, and some provinces can expect to be hit harder than others. Mark Miller warned some provinces could see their number of permits cut in half. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Yukon University says it's doing everything it can to learn more about these new limits on international student numbers. The university says it's been in touch with Brendan Hanley's office. It's planning to work closely with the Liberal Member of Parliament. It wants to ensure the impact on the university is minimal. Last fall, of the 469 registered full-time students at Yukon University, 130 were international. Canadian researchers say restricting nuts at schools is not the best way to prevent serious allergic reactions. And that's prompted some schools to allow nuts in their facilities, including one in Whitehorse. But not everyone is happy about the new change. The CBC's Deanna Sumanak-Johnson has that story.
At this Whitehorse Elementary School's cafeteria, happy sounds of kids reconnecting after the holidays. And a few sights you wouldn't have seen in Canadian schools in years. Nuts and peanuts are now allowed for students in grade 3 and up. The initiative, says the principal, came from the parents. The school invited them for a big meeting.
We basically all agreed that nuts and peanuts were nutritious and they were part of healthy eating habits. So parents were very aware of the research, and they were also very aware of the risks, like the pros and cons of allowing.
The school does have other measures in place. Youngest grades still have food restrictions, and the office is stocked with EpiPens.
For years, banning things like nuts and peanut butter from Canadian schools was considered the gold standard in preventing severe allergic reactions in students. But a major 2021 study led by Canadian researchers found that there just isn't enough good evidence that bans even work.
I don't know if they have what.
Dr. Susan Wasserman was the lead researcher on that study.
What we found is that there wasn't great literature to support the practice.
But the study came with major caveats.
If you are going to eliminate food restriction as just one of the things that may work, that everything else has to be in place. Meaning that the staff and whoever looks after children do have to be aware of who the food allergic children are. Epinephrine auto-injectors need to be on site and preferably carried by the students.
Plus, of course, rigorous hand washing and cleaning of surfaces. But those best practices may not be possible in all schools.
The first module is all about food allergy.
Food Allergy Canada is an organization dedicated to helping Canadians who live with food allergies, a group that includes at least 600,000 school children.
We have to balance, the desire to send in nutritious lunches without any restrictions to the safety of these children.
This expert says schools are advised to have many policies in place, not just bans, but that those recommendations have to contend with reality. Some schools are so strapped for staff that older kids supervise younger kids' lunches.
When it comes to removing restrictions or removing bans, I think that a lot of schools will be very hesitant to consider that because it does have a lot of implications.
Simon, now 9, almost died when he was 18 months old. His throat started closing after he had a single cashew.
It completely changed kind of the trajectory I thought I was on as a parent.
Sending Simon to school leaves his parents racked with anxiety, something they say would be even worse if more schools were to scrap food bans.
Why reverse it? Like, what if the argument is that it is giving people a false sense of security? I want to assure everybody that as a parent of a child who can die from ingesting something, I never have a sense of security, ever, never.
That story from the CBC's Deanna Sumanak-Johnson. We'll be back after the break.
This is the CFBC's largest attachment, home to elite units, federal and municipal scope. Congratulations on making the cut.
Have you spoken with your father?
I'm coming for you and everyone like you.
I would rather be Baroque than blue. There's lots of reasons to not be a cop.
A Surrey girl should know all of them.
Maybe you should reconsider the uniform and everything that it represents.
I'd rather fight from inside it to make a change.
Why, hello. It's me, Seth Rogen. 10 potters will be facing off in the most extraordinary ceramics competition show that this country has ever seen.
I'm Jen Robertson, and I'll be your host.
So are these potters ready?
This exploded.
To test their skills at the wheel and push themselves every week?
Oh, no.
So the ones that do stand out, they really do stand out.
And who will be named champion?
I'm excited to see it. Oh, wow!
Of the Great Canadian Pottery Throwdown.
How can any of this be fair?
Now, you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A Russian scheme here
shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job?
Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
It appears we have a mystery to solve.
You'll be next. He's dead.
A murderer was murdered.
Toronto Constabulary, stop! Here we go.
Make it mini!
I'm gonna push it. Let's go.
My hands are shaking.
This is all very overwhelming.
Don't expect anything normal.
I can't believe it. I'm here.
A new report from an environmental advocacy group says tax incentives are fueling a surge of exploratory mining in northern BC. The report says this surge makes a handful of investors richer, but ends up costing taxpayers and the environment. Katrin Pilkington reports.
This is the Transboundary watershed. Over 4 major rivers flow between British Columbia and Alaska in this area. A new report says the promise of gold underneath the ground here is drawing a flurry of mining exploration. The report is by the Environmental Investigation Agency, an international environmental advocacy group. It says the interest in mining is being driven by venture capital and government incentives, and claims that raising money for mining exploration is becoming profitable in and of itself. C.T. Harry is a scientist with the Environmental Investigation Agency. He says governments are gambling with public money with no guarantee of a payoff.
It serves to move the risk that should be private onto the public in public funds in the private hands.
Without these exploration projects, we don't have the mines that provide us with the metals and minerals that are necessary for a low carbon future. If we don't explore, we don't find. And if we don't find, we don't have the copper for wires, we don't have the silver for solar panels, we don't have the metal for steel.
The report centers on northern BC, but rivers and watersheds cross borders. The report says shared watersheds can mean the impacts of industry are felt across many territories. It also raises concerns about a flurry of exploration in ecologically sensitive areas, some still covered by glaciers. It recommends governments ensure that mines could be feasible before approving exploration projects. Katrin Pilkington, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Last week's Devolution Ceremony in Iqaluit was a celebration of all things Nunavut, and it won't soon be forgotten. It featured artists from each region of the territory. There was fiddle music, a circus act, and Inuit performers of all ages. Sylvia Kluche is an artist from Kuujjuaq. She curated the entire ceremony, and she designed the room to be circular with everyone on the same level.
And it was so beautiful because everyone are really good people. Everyone worked really well together. And that was the idea, was just to create this really, not just a happy vibe, but a sincere, genuine feeling for the event. And that was to celebrate our resilience and celebrate our strength. We've come such a long way. And we didn't want to feel like it was a political event. We wanted it to feel like a gathering.
Kluche says she wanted the ceremony to showcase talented young Inuit, and that is exactly what happened. A young Inuit carpenter built the ceremony's stage, podium, and kudlik stand. Kluche says that stage reflected the image of sea ice and snow. And we have another story about Inuit culture for you now, this time from Labrador. Mina Campbell grew up watching her grandmother clean seal with an ulu. About 20 years ago, she tried making her first ulu, but it wasn't until the pandemic that she really sharpened those skills. Here's that story.
Uluit was always in my life because my grandmother cleaned sealskins for herself and for the hunters in the community, and I cleaned sealskins as well, so I use them. And it was traditionally known as an Inuit women's knife, so it was mainly used by the women and not mainly made by the women. So usually the men would make them and the women would use them. But now, I mean, I guess I'm breaking that tradition, but that's it. Hey. My name is Mina Campbell, and I work at the Labrador Interpretation Centre, which is a seasonal tourism facility. And the year COVID came, we hardly had any visitors. And so I told the staff to bring their crafts to work. So normally I get laid off in the fall, so all winter long I do crafts, sewing sealskin mainly, mitts, boots, and different things. But this year we took our crafts to work. So by the time I got laid off in the fall, I was tired of doing crafts. So I said I need to try to find something else to do. So I said, maybe I'll try to make an ulu, see if I remember what to do. Because you can't buy saw blades anymore, and even if you could, I would scrounge them before I bought them, because it is a way to, use it. This is going to go in the garbage, and it's going to be in the landfill for how long? A long time. And so I just draw it out on the blade. So then I sand them off. So that's why half of it is sanded, half is not. I don't try to make it too shiny. I want to have a little bit of character to it, because I don't want to have an ulu this. Even if it's a decoration, I don't think it should be shiny and varnished and all perfect. So it has to have a little character, but I try to make it nice. So I drill a hole through the stem, which is going to go on here like this, and drill a hole through the blade, and tack that together. The little pin, and then I put the handle on, drill a hole in the moose antler, which is also something that I scrounge and use up, because sometimes people keep them when they're hunting, but they don't always. And then I also use the antler for a stand. But eventually I do. I'll have something finished similar to this. In my family, like I said, my grandmother used to clean sealskins for people. So you hold it like this. If this is the sealskin, you take the fat off. You got to make sure that the ulu is good and sharp. And I sharpen mine with steel. So you take the fat off just like that. Or if you want to cut the meat, you use it like this. So every fall, when I get laid off from work now, I take up my tools, however many saw blades I have. So anybody that got a moose antler that they don't want, I'll take it from you. Same as the old blades, please, and thanks. But I think it is a good thing to continue to do. It's a good way to teach people about the Inuit culture, not only about making them, but also about the use of them, because, they've been used since time immemorial by Inuit women. So it is a lot of different things, I guess, within a day.
The West Baffin Cooperative is celebrating its 65th anniversary this year. It's Canada's oldest Indigenous-owned and Inuit-led arts organization. The West Baffin Cooperative was first established in 1959 in Gingite. It provided economic benefits to hundreds of local artists and promoted their work across the world.
Since the beginning of the whole creation of this initiative, and sharing our art and making a space for Inuit and locals to expand their art and vision, it's been driven locally and with care so that the artists and everyone involved are a part of the success, and you can still see that today.
To celebrate its 65th anniversary, the cooperative will host more than a dozen exhibitions and special events around the world. And it's not wasting any time. In December, it teamed up with Canada Goose in Miami. That event showcased the work of artist Samayu Akasuk. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. We leave you with a look at your forecast. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
What do I like? I like open fires, moonlit nights, chatty letters, rainy days. I like daydreaming. I love this colorful little island of ruby, emerald, and sapphire. Yet often my dark moods come. I'm possessed body and soul by this depression. They say women shouldn't write. Some days I almost give up. But I cannot contain my imagination. I made Anne real. I gave her my love of nature, my love of books, and my childhood dreams. My greatest happiness would be to climb the alpine path and write upon it a woman's humble name.
Lucy Maud Montgomery battled depression, rejection, and sexism to become known around the world for Anne of Green Gables and 19 other novels.
Closing this case gets you one step closer to you getting back on the squad and keeping you out of prison.
You're not a detective, you're a con artist. You have a driver's license, right?
Of course, I'm 9. If you couldn't be a cop, what would you be?
Nothing. My dad raised me to be a cop. That's who I am. Stay here.
You're adorable.
You guys are making this entire station look like a circus.
He's busy trying to solve a murder. What are you doing?
Thanks for having my back.
Look at you.
This your girlfriend?
This is not my girlfriend.
She's way too cool to be your girlfriend.
She's not way too cool to be my girlfriend.
Knock, knock!
Who's that?
He's fired!
I'm starting to think you don't know what a joke is.
You're gonna eat nothing but raw spleen.
Getting into peak physical shape is 50% training, 50% diet.
Never occurred to me to bring lawn chairs out here. Never occurred to the Egyptians to build the pyramids until it did.
Oh! Simpler times.
Let's set you up with a lunch date. You're deaf? I don't know sign.
This feels a little wrong.
If accessibility is wrong, we don't want to be right.
Spicy. Oh, do tell.
Breaking news. The critics are talking. Oh, this is it. Imagine the Wonder Years if it were written by Gene Shepard.
They twisted it all up. Well, you can't trust a newsman.
Highly recommended.
Onwards.
Onwards.
Heartwarming.
This doesn't mean I'm better than anyone here tonight. It just says it.
100% fresh.
Well, I suppose we don't need to get rid of the cable right this second.
Son of a critch.
You look like a cod gasping for air.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes your world.
All right.
Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
It goes on like this, and on and on and on and on.
It's news you can trust, delivered when you want, where you want. On Canada's News app. Download the free CBC News app.
Name something you see people do on TV that you secretly could do better. Host. I knew that was hard.
Family Feud Canada. Watch free on CBC Gem.
We want you to know that you can ask us anything. Need help with your Riz?
You just made Riz uncool. There is something that's been bothering me. Are mutual funds or ETFs better for my long-term goals?
Load weapon! Welcome to the show! Fire! Big, 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 big! I'm from the Liberal Party, and
Every week, the issues that matter to Canadians.
These are acts of desperation.
Connecting politics to people.
Some people have lost everything.
Join me for Rosemary Barton Live.
What do we know
About that with Andrew Chang.
I think we can explain.
Watch free on CBC Gem.